Hello, I'm Dr. Pierre Samaan. Great being back with you. I hope you've enjoyed the previous series, and in this series, as we begin a new direction in our talks, we're talking about the moral decision making that we all have to go through, and I'm sure you're going to find some interesting thoughts in all of this and helping you and helping me. Whenever I study, whenever I prepare these things, I learn and I grow, and I enjoy doing so. Keep in mind that New Horizons Institute of Counseling is for healing, peace, and harmony. We're here for you to help you in your direction of life, in reconciling, in healing, and whatever other situations that may occur. Moral decision making. Well, moral reasoning begins by following, the example of mom and dad, you might say. It starts there, doesn't it? When you think about it, where does that start? Where does reasoning start? It really starts at the beginning. The leader can be a mature adult, or it could be a peer, could be a sibling, could be someone else, or what you watch on TV. We learn from the modeling that occurs, teaching us how to reason, how to make decisions, hopefully making better decisions than we would have otherwise. In other words, modeling becomes a primary source of learning in early childhood. In brain development, what we acquire in childhood are the building blocks that adult thinking gives to us in the modeling. The building blocks of thinking, feeling, and behavior. We watch mom and dad. That's why it's so important for mom and dad to model that behavior. And it helps mom and dad to model that behavior if they go to church, if they are learning themselves from proper modeling, from learning, from teaching, educating, and hopefully coming out of a home where that proper modeling was occurring. Within God's design law, moral development is a process in which people form a progressive level or a progressive sense of right and wrong, proper and improper. For example, I can think of my kids when they were young, and the grandkids today. Young children may defensively say, after breaking their mother's precious vase, and we've had a few vases broken, it's your fault because you put it there. Well, no, you weren't supposed to be throwing the ball in the living room, but that's what kids are going to do. They're going to start blaming because they're at that early level, and their defenses immediately come up with self-protection. Self-protection is guardedness. And when we get to that point of self-protection, we're going down into the basement of the brain, as I've spoken of before, away from reasoning, good reasoning, where the healthy part, the good thinking part of our brain really is located in the upper room of the brain. Down there, we have that limbic system where fear and emotion center of the brain is located, and that's self-protection. And wherever there's self-protection, there's selfishness, only thinking of self. And there's anger, bitterness, and paranoia, and whatever else that may come out of down there. Look at the previous episodes that we've spoken about that, and you'll understand more of it. Psychiatrist and author Tim Jennings says this: the Bible teaches that love is a design protocol for life. Now, design protocol basically is saying God's design, God's makeup of creation, his makeup of creation is a certain way. You might say design laws. What goes up comes down is a design law of gravity, law of exercise, exerting, laws of physics and so on. Those are design laws that are unchangeable. They'll always be there. Those are God's laws, design laws. So design protocol for life, the principle of other-centered giving on which life is constructed. He designed us that way. We're designed to be other-centered thinking. If we do that, we thrive. If we circle the wagons, we're going down into the basement, we're becoming self-protective, we're becoming self-centered, we're becoming selfish. Sin and selfishness go hand in hand. Whenever we sin, there's selfishness going on there. Whenever there's selfishness, there's sin. Love for others results in such values as modesty, humility, and wise stewardship of money. Dr. Jennings identifies 7 levels of moral decision-making as being reward and punishment, marketplace exchange, social conformity, law and order, that's a big one, love for others, principle-based living, and understanding friend of God. These levels are progressive levels that we grow into. So we're talking today about reward and punishment, and we're going to get into each of these subjects each week. Reward and punishment is where we start, though, isn't it? Because as little children, that's about all we understand. Reward and punishment is the earliest development of understanding right and wrong. This is necessary because it's a starting point of learning. It's really down there in the basement. You know, it's the beginning, the early stages of feel good, and to feel good, do what's right, or it's going to hurt, or if you don't eat when you're hungry, you're going to feel uncomfortable, and so you're going to cry and you're going to get upset, or if you have a stomach ache, if you have colic or whatever, you're down there in the basement. And so it's the beginning of learning about right and wrong. So if I cry, Mom comes and picks me up and cuddles me and nurtures me, and I feel better. And so it's right at that time, isn't it? It's not wrong. But as we grow through these levels, we learn that attention seeking inappropriately does become wrong. So we develop and mature on how to get that attention in appropriate ways, which we'll be talking about. This is a necessary starting point in learning, but remaining at this immature level, and keep in mind, this is immature. This is a little baby. Well, staying at this turns an adult into an emotional child. I'm sure you've seen older people hanging around young people constantly. I once had I was teaching a class in addictions and dynamics of dysfunctional relationships, and I think he was about 72, 75 years old, fellow who was auditing the class. And it was a class of over 30 students working on their state certification as addictions professionals. And I was an instructor for the Net Training Institute, which was the only organization in Florida at that time that was allowed to use the biblical principles in teaching those courses, because the 12-step is a process, a spiritual process, and the state said that's fine to approach it that way. And so he was a prisoner. He was a lifer in prison, and he had been out. And I'm sure I've told you this story before, but just briefly, he said, "Well, that's how we know when you came into prison. You know, who you're hanging out with." And what do you mean? I said, "Well, because if you came into prison when you were 20, you're going to hang around the 20-year-olds because you don't mature in prison. You stay at the level you're at because you can't trust anybody in prison, and so you hang around those people that you're comfortable with, and you're comfortable with those people that you came into prison with, or at the age level you came into prison, because that's where you are emotionally." Emotional child. That's what we're talking about here in this level 1 of reward and punishment. For example, Another example is slavery of any race, and serfdom are in this level. Remember serfdom in the Middle Ages, medieval times. Don't ask, don't think, don't understand, don't deviate from orders, or you'll receive punishment. You can identify in level 1 the Nazi death camp soldiers, the Stalinist gulag guards, the present-day soldiers or exhorters of malignant dictators. Now, keep in mind, I'm not saying all soldiers. I used to be a soldier. I'm a veteran. We're not talking about all soldiers. We're talking about those soldiers who are ordered to go into the apartment building and kill all the citizens in there, even though they haven't done anything wrong. The dictator-type soldiers who, if they don't do it, they're going to be killed. There's going to be serious consequences. And so they do it rather than doing the right thing in refusing but sacrificing their life for the life of others. Slavery is a condition in which another owns one person. Serfdom appeared several centuries after slavery, in which the land or job, it could be a land they were working on, or the service to the king or whoever it may have been, bound people into service and being indentured to by the power brokers, dictators, kings, malignant presidents, chairman of the board, etc. Pay attention in history, because we're seeing a swing occurring now. It's becoming more and more obvious. The New World Order may be swinging back to the medieval ages of that type of serfdom. One synonym for slavery and serfdom is a yoke. The forcefulness of the yoke that is restraining your freedom will most often base moral decision-making at level 1. That yoke, that burden, those heavy responsibilities, requirements, constraints that are put upon you. The reward in level 1 is for unconditional obedience, or punishment ensues. Now, we see this every day with abusive homes, abusive parent, the victimization, and hopefully the survival of those coming out of that. I once was teaching a class, and I mentioned the word victim, and one of the individuals in the back of the class, raised the hand and took offense to that word victim. Well, we like to think of ourselves as survivors, she said. And I said, well, that sounds good. I'm going to use that term from now on, survivors. The abusive parent or bully or partner establishes their right to rule by displaying power and vengeance on the weak. Well, survival of the fittest comes out of that, doesn't it? That's that level 1. Operating in the moral decision-making level of reward and punishment in level 1 at first seems simple and easy. Well, just do what you're told. Or, well, it's a universal income, so why don't I just get that free money? No problem there. Just do what I'm told and get the free money. Problem with that is there's always a hook. Over time, exhausting describes the pull of the power brokers, growing expectations, stringently tugging upon your yoke. You must perform to a higher expectation to repay freely given income. So many times I see that in abusive homes, where the power broker, the severely dysfunctional parent, abuses reward and punishment, and the one child may comply, another child may rebel. The one who complies, the burden becomes greater as they get older because that power broker is expecting more from that one who complies and exerts more punishment to the one that rebels. More is expected. There's payback. Well, you owe me. I paid for your food. I paid for your clothes, and so on and so forth, they'll say. Satan wants people in level 1. He'd rather you just stay back there. To see God as judge, jury, and executioner, he blames God for what he's doing to us. I see that in politics. It's finger pointing, and when they start the finger pointing, usually it's what they're doing that they're projecting onto others. And it just kind of makes me laugh. I can't even watch the news anymore because you see that projecting going on constantly, and you know exactly what they're doing because they're telling you what they're doing but by blaming somebody else for it. Mercy is seen as weakness and insists God is a God of power and control through inducement or torture, suffering and killing. Unreasoning animals, creatures of instinct is what Satan wants us to become, and what he is maneuvering things through his deceptions of lying about God, of projecting onto God who he is, causing many to fall away. And the sign reads, hiring no reasoning necessary. To ease life burdens brought upon us in level 1, Jesus said this, "So come to me, all who are tired, worn down and exhausted from fear, selfishness, and fighting to survive on your own, and I'll give you rest. Join up with me and learn my methods, the principles upon which life is built to operate. For I am gentle and humble in heart, and you'll find healing and rest for your souls. For joining up with me and living in harmony with the way life is designed," and remember we said earlier, God's design, his way of designing the laws and the way we live, the way he has created us, harmony with the way life is designed to operate in what makes life easy and lightens life's burdens. That's from Matthew 11, 28 to 30 of the Remedy Bible. Doesn't that sound a whole lot better? Doesn't that sound hopeful? Doesn't that sound safe? God is a safe God, made out to be evil, punishing, and so on by Lucifer at that time, now we call Satan or the devil, who deceives so many into fearing God as a judge and punisher. But the translators have used those translations inappropriately in assuming God's laws are the same as our laws. You do something wrong, you get punished for it. It's not true. The translators were translating based on how they saw God through their human law and order. And we'll be talking about law and order in level 4. God is a God of love. Look at Scripture in that way. Interpret it. If you're not sure about something and it sounds wrong, look it up. You can do that now in the searches on the computer. Look up the word. What are the additional meanings to that word where the translators may have picked up legal meanings? What are some of those other meanings? Instead of punishment, there's consequences. Well, consequences, where does that come from? It comes from sin, not from God. Sin brings about those consequences. God doesn't punish you because you've made a mistake, because you have sinned, you've done something selfishly. Every time you do something selfishly, every time you sin, you're hurting yourself. You're tearing down your character. It decays over time. Those are consequences. God's not doing it. That's part of the design law of God, how He has designed us to be. We thrive if we're doing good things that cause our body, our minds to grow, to heal. But if we do those things that are hurtful to us or others, those things are going to cause our character to decay. And then we're in trouble. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this today. We'll be getting into the next subject next time, where we will be talking about level 2, marketplace exchange. I'll see you then. God bless.